Welcome to our Read Aloud. We will continue reading The Crowns of Croswald by D.E. Knight. Chapter 1 The Slurry. That evening, Ivy was, as usual, lost in her sketching. This was Ivy's favorite place to dream. The hill on the plum acreage overlooked the Notch Valley and the vast purple sea of slurry blossoms. The farther away from the castle, the taller the stems of slurry grew. What made this spot so special, more important than its beauty, was its distance from the castle's kitchen, the furthest that Ivy had ever ventured. It was a steep enough climb that the castle's head cook Helga would never attempt it. Helga was the type who considered eating the best sort of bodybuilding. A resounding thump jolted Ivy from her reverie. The vision that she had been drawing gave way to the affectionate face of her old and only friend. Rembrandt leaned against an old oak with his thick, short arm, his warm brown eyes meeting her hazel ones. She smiled up at him. Lying down was practically the only way she could look up at Rembrandt, an ancient woods dwarf. At least he seemed ancient to 15, going on 16 Ivy. She loved his books and stories more than anything, tales of deep magic that were so far from her reality. Ivy would gladly give up sketching to hear his raspy voice spinning yarns about trolls and dragons, princesses and castles, scrivenists and their quills. Rembrandt was the bright spot in the sculldrony maid's life of drudgery. "Hello there, Ivy. I'm interrupting you." Rembrandt returned her smile, a little out of breath from his hike up the opposite side of the hill. She stretched and said, "The best kind of interruption." As a castle sculldrony maid, Ivy was solely responsible for managing the kitchen's fire-breathing cookers from dawn till dusk. Despite being the oldest breed of domesticated dragon, sculdrons were creatures that needed quite a bit of care. But Ivy spent each evening at this crest, dreaming. In the warm moons, she spent entire nights out here to escape the tiny windowless room where she slept. Whenever the moon was full, Rembrandt would meet her here. Her earliest memory of him was when she was about 5, but Rembrandt told a story about her baby blanket magically changing colors, so he must have known her even longer than that. Now she drew a deep breath of night air into her lungs. The fresh, sugar-sweet scent of the slurry fields was good for that. Ivy was lucky it was Rembrandt who had found her. Even though the House of Plum was an honorable, generally nice lot, royals didn't take well to their servants loafing about. "I'm so glad you came. I didn't know if you'd be able to. You're a bit later than usual," Ivy added with tenderness. He was the closest thing to family she had. "My legs! Whew! My legs nearly gave out," he panted. "Brought you some books. Finally, some about what you've been nagging me for. The ancient art of scrivener's studies." Rembrandt was the only one she'd ever met who understood her thirst for knowledge and love of reading. Everyone else at the castle seemed dull and muted, uninterested in anything, beyond their work and the latest servant gossip. That he brought her books was a small miracle, after all. Books were luxury items not intended for help. Rembrandt kicked off his pointed hickory boots and untucked his loose shirt, getting comfortable and catching his breath. He stretched out, though his form in the grass still wasn't all that big. He tossed a coarse sack to Ivy, who squealed with exhilaration. She counted 1, 2, 3 books. "Oh, Rembrandt, they're beautiful." He smiled. "A little Moon's Day present for you, Ivy." Ivy kneeled, gently holding the books, these valuable yet mysterious gifts. She read the gilded words on the spines and skimmed the flowing script within, each book sounding more intriguing than the last. The Wiz and the Weasel by Derwent Edgar Knight. Wanda Wetzel the Wise by Derwent Edgar Knight. A Scrivenist's Guide to Quills by Derwent Edgar Knight. "These books are unlike those you find in the Royal's library, Ivy." Her thoughts swirled. Scrivenery, Just the thought of magic exhilarated her. Rembrandt, old Rem, you've brought me books before, but this? Books about magic? I can hardly thank you. I know it is ridiculous, but sometimes I even imagine that I myself am a scriveness. Ha! She laughed and waved an imaginary quill about, nearly losing her footing on the steep hill. Rather than chuckle at his favorite daydreamer's antics, as he usually did, Rembrandt coughed and looked away, almost as if he were hiding tears. First editions, collector's items. Glad to know you like them. Like them? I love them! I love Colette Crumb's charmed chai and crumpets. I use it every day in that kitchen. And I've almost finished Wanda Mead's magical stones. But these take the cake, Rembrandt. I know every castle has a scriveness, but ours here at the Castle Plum, doesn't he seem a little dull? I've never seen him do anything but nap, that is. Well, the Castle Plum is a special place, and that it is very unspecial. The Plum family has historically prized predictability over imagination, routine over discovery. Hence, the slurry fields. I suppose Theodore Thumb, their scriveness, was sent to Plum because he would appreciate the family's philosophy, or lack thereof, Rembrandt added ruefully. What do you mean about the slurry fields? You'll read about it in there. He jabbed an old finger at a book. Slurry dampens the effect of magic. Wanda Wetzel's the one who discovered its properties. Oh, what's that you have there? He unfolded the vellum at her side to reveal a detailed sketch of an ancient, deserted castle, rotting away. I can see in your work a little spark of the old magic, despite these flowers. You know, it's best not to let Helga find you with any of these. You forget, I work with the castle's fire squad. I keep only my favorites hidden in the inside pocket of my skirt. The rest help to heat up breakfast. Just be careful, my friend. Someday you'll meet others like you, Ivy, the scriveness we were just talking about. Their memories are photographic, and their fingers unstoppably fast at sketching, just as yours are. Another, more important thing that you have in common with them is their powerful, interconnected memory. It's something that they practice for years. Your visions, your dreams, there's magic in you. You're different. The slurry is fighting it, but even the slurry can't win every time. Ivy bit the side of her lip, intrigued. But I'm stuck here. Can't I go with you? I'd rather be with you. Here, you are safe, Ivy. But the time is coming when... Rembrandt swallowed and looked away as if he didn't know what to say next. Today, you are safe, but things are changing in Croswald. You need to be ready. Ivy thought of the dank larder that was her room. It doesn't feel safe. The only thing keeping me from being eaten alive by rats are the castle's cats. You always said you wanted a pet. Cats and rats, how lovely you have lots of them. He smiled wryly. Ha! And scaldrons. Well, would you look at this? Rembrandt chirped, holding the pocket chime clipped to his beltless belt loops. It's almost midnight. Which means I really should get some sleep in, Ivy muttered, a little annoyed. She grew quiet as her closest friend, though they were separated by decades and their species, still gazed closely at her sketch. The majority of her sketches were of this very same mysterious castle. He drew in a long, wheezy breath. Listen, I have to ask you before I go. Is this castle still appearing in your dreams? I visit there almost every night. A shame I can't visit one less overgrown, Ivy smiled, trying to lighten the mood and the weight of this apparent obsession. Then, growing serious, she added, But the castle's library, you should see it, Rembrandt. Just like in your stories, vast with rows and rows of shelves and countless books. But when I go to open them, it's a whole lot of blank pages. And there's always someone there, the same man. Not scary, but but weird. He's intent, like he has to tell me something, but I can't ever see his face or hear him say anything. I can't explain it. Every night I visit this strange place, exploring its dark, dusty halls. Ivy shook her head, baffled, only to wake up in the Castle Plum's kitchen larder. It reminds me of a story. I've been saving this one. Would you like to hear the tale? Rembrandt asked. Would I? And after, I should get some sleep. Tomorrow's the holiday, a big day, feast and all. Moon's Day, the biggest day, he grinned. I'd invite you if I could, but I'm not even invited myself. Thank you for the thought, dear girl. Now, where was I? Oh, yes. The story I'd like to share is of a castle lost. A lost castle? Who would lose a thing like that? Ivy giggled. Well, it all started with a petty prince and a surly dwarf. This prince set off to get a pint and stepped on the beard of a dwarf. His beard was as long as the tavern's floorboards. Give it a good cut, the prince suggested to him snootily. Do you expect me, a prince, to shuffle along walking, sweeping the floor with my feet? Your hair is longer than that of my horse. Out of malice, the prince sneakily swapped the dwarf's drink with another as red as the dwarf's excessively long ginger beard. Like yours. Ah, this was a much, much younger, less cautious dwarf. After taking a swig, a volume of 5 human sips, the dwarf turned into a donkey, a common reaction for dwarves who are, of course, allergic to beet ale. The prince laughed, but it was the scrivenly dwarf who had the last laugh. He cast a forgetfulness curse over the prince and his family, causing them to wander away from their castle, never to find it again. And the family scrivenous? Did they go too? The whole lot of them, Rembrandt said woefully. 4 generations, I'm afraid. Ivy scoffed. But, Rembrandt, honestly, who loses track of a castle? Perhaps you are taking your art of storytelling a bit too far. Ivy ended her sentence with a sleepy yawn. I'd love to meet a real scrivenous one day, besides plain old Theodore. They, I am certain, will come to find you soon. And that's the end of chapter 1.